Hey guys, welcome to another edition of the Bridge HC Online. I am the lead pastor here, Larry Vinson. And today we're starting a whole new series based upon the song Heathens by 21 Pilots. Now, if you've not heard this song, do yourself a favor and go to YouTube and look this song up and get the lyric video because you want to see exactly what is being said. And even though the band 21 Pilots is not a Christian band, they are Christians who let their faith play out in their various songs. And so when we're talking about this song Heathens, Tyler Joseph, the lead singer, talks about that when they started, they attracted a lot of unique people who seemed a bit strange, people who had questionable backgrounds, people who just didn't feel like they belonged in normal context, people like me, people who just don't feel like they fit in everyday culture, right? But as the band became popular, a lot of people, including Christians who were hearing about this Christian band or this band of Christians, were starting to join their fan base and interact with the fans that had been there from the beginning. And Tyler did not want these people, these Christians, with these ideas of what Christians should be and how they should look and how they should act, pushing away their most faithful fans. So he wrote this song as a warning to those newcomers. Be careful how you treat my friends, or these heathens, as he calls them. And so over the next few weeks, we are going to take a look at some of the lines of this iconic song and talk about how it plays out in our faith today. All right, specifically, what can we learn from the Bible, how to evangelize and how to relate to non-Christians, and especially those that may seem a little bit different than the rest of us. Now, today we're going to take the very first line of that song, all my friends are heathens, take it slow. And we're going to talk about what does it mean to take it slow when we're introducing the gospel to our non-Christian friends. All right, and we're going to do this in our normal way, 3 different sections with 3 different conversations. In our first section, we're going to talk about how we have to be patient with people who do not know Jesus. And we're going to show a Bible story that fits exactly with that narrative. And then on our second section, we're going to talk about how God is actually the author and giver of our patience because he himself is perfectly patient. And then finally, in number 3, our third section, we're going to talk about, yes, even though we have to be patient, we also have to understand the limitations of patience. And when we do come in and start talking about Jesus, regardless of where that person may be. So let's talk about this by starting with our very first section. We're calling Patience is Key. I want to start off by talking about our Bible story. It's from Acts chapter 17. Now in Acts chapter 17, Paul arrives in Athens and is just utterly shocked by the amount of idols that are in this town. Okay, this is a very polytheistic culture, and there are tons of different idols and different things that people worship. And so, what Paul does is that he talks to the Jews and the God-fearing Greeks, and then he publicly debates about why these things shouldn't be happening before he is eventually invited to share his ideas with a group of Stoic philosophers. Now, we're going to talk about why that is important here in just a moment, but let's just dive right into Paul's speech to the Stoic philosophers, starting in verse 22. Here's what Luke writes. He says, Paul then stood up in the meeting of the Areopagus and said, "People of Athens, I see that in every way you are very religious. For as I walked around and looked carefully at your objects of worship, I even found an altar with this inscription, to an unknown God. So you are ignorant of the very thing you worship, and this is what I'm going to proclaim to you." Now, as I read this first part of the story, I start to understand a little bit about this understanding and this truth that we as Christians have to be patient with people who do not know Jesus. And Paul gives us a perfect way of introducing non-believers to the gospel. Why? Because he took time to understand his audience. He knew exactly what made those people tick because he explored the town and he studied, he paid attention to those things. He tells the Athens straight out, the Stoic philosopher straight out, look, I went around town and I found some really good things about you. Specifically that you care about spiritual things, that you are very religious, right? But he also found some bad things. Bad things that he wasn't afraid to say out loud. Specifically that they put their energy and focus into these false idols. But here's the thing. Paul's patience shows in the fact that even though he saw the bad, he never condemned them. He never said they were going straight to hell. He didn't just jump in there and start condemning people left and right or cursing them left and right. No, he talked about these bad things, but he never condemned them. Now, that doesn't mean that he didn't talk about the truth either. As a matter of fact, he didn't shy away from the truth. Paul was clear, he was direct, and he knew how to get their attention. Now, this is how I know that he studied who they were, because the very thing that he called them was ignorant. Now, this may not mean a big thing to most of you. This might even seem offensive to some people. But Paul didn't mean it that way. Paul knew that he was talking to a group of Stoic philosophers. And he knew that the one thing that really caught the attention of Stoic philosophers was being called ignorant. Because for a Stoic philosopher, ignorance was the root of all evil. And so Paul wasn't trying to offend them. He was trying to get them to see the truth through their ignorance. That's a pretty serious accusation, one that would have caught their attention. You know, they wanted to hear more because of this fact that he's calling them ignorant. So what do we learn from all this, especially when it comes to patience? Well, listen, how we talk to non-believers is different than how we talk to people, how we talk to people of the faith. If you look at the verses before this, Paul spoke to both Jews and God-fearing Greeks. I talked about that in the context right before we started reading Acts chapter 17, verse 22. Now, these Jews and God-fearing Greeks are people who should have known better, who should have been fighting this immense number of false idols, but stood there and did nothing. And after he's done talking with them, he then speaks publicly and debates openly to anyone who is willing to listen. Again, Paul doesn't go straight to the Stoic philosophers. He doesn't go straight to the people who God wanted him to talk to in the first place. No, he talks to those in the church first. He openly debates it with anyone who is willing to listen. And it wasn't until he was invited personally by the Stoic philosophers that he had that private conversation with them. Again, he didn't crash their debate or their discussion. He didn't force his way into the conversation. He only went until he was invited. The truth is, guys, as Christians, we can speak openly to those who know better. As a matter of fact, the Bible gives us evidence that we should speak openly to those who know better and without hesitation. We should also speak publicly to anyone who will listen. That was exactly what Jesus did. But we don't invite ourselves into a private conversation, into a direct conversation, unless we are invited. Jesus never walked up to somebody and started spouting at them. He waited for them to come to him. He still spoke truth. Still spoke painful truth at times. But not until he was invited. Private conversations about matters of faith with non-believers takes patience. We cannot just barge in and expect to have a close and intimate conversation about Jesus unless we are invited. Nor can we assume the same level of intimacy that we have with other Christians. We have to learn from Paul. We have to establish a reputation. Whether that be by establishing a personal connection and relationship like Paul did, or through a reputable public ministry, also like Paul did. It's going to take time. Think about that as we head into our first set of discussion questions. If you're new with us here, welcome. I'm so glad that you decided to join us today. Here's what's about to happen. Some questions are going to pop up on the screen. You're going to go ahead and push pause. You're going to take about 10 to 15 minutes to do one of two things. If you're with a group of people, you're gonna openly discuss what you just heard, the verses that you just read, and the questions that are on the screen, or anything else that has to deal with that. Okay, and then if you're by yourself, that's fine. Take the time to reflect, to journal, and just to pray through these questions and to come up with these answers on your own. Okay, don't skip out on this time, because this is really the bread and butter of our time together. Okay, it really drives these points home. So go ahead and push pause, and when you're done, come on back, and we will continue on with our second section. Hey guys, welcome back. I hope you had a really good conversation. Patience is really the key to talking with non-believers about Jesus and reaching them for the gospel. You know, I was thinking a lot about this week, about this idea of patience and reaching those people that God ultimately has called us to. And I couldn't help but to think about the bridge and what we're doing as a church, and how we're not hitting the people that we want to hit yet. But that doesn't mean I don't believe that we're not going to. It takes patience. We have to have a reputable ministry. We have to be respected in our community. We're not there yet. Now, we're working on that. That's something that I am excited about doing this summer and reaching out to the people. But until then, I can't expect to have these direct and intimate conversations with people that don't know who we are or what we do or why we're doing it. You know, that's the key here. We have to be patient. It's going to take time. Patience is a hard thing to achieve. And like anything else, when we are struggling with achieving it, we must learn from and rely on God and His nature to grow in our patience. Now, Paul hints at this, about this nature of God in our as he continues to explain God to these Stoic philosophers. Let's take a look at what I'm talking about as we continue our story in Acts chapter 17, verse 24. Luke writes, "The God who made the world and everything in it is the Lord of heaven and earth, and does not live in temples built by human hands. And He is not served by human hands, and as if He needed anything. Rather, He Himself gives everyone life and breath and everything else. From one man He made all the nations, that they should inhabit the whole earth. And He marked out their appointed times in history and the boundaries of their lands. God did this so that they would seek Him and perhaps reach out for Him and find Him, though He is not far from any one of us." Man, highlight that verse. That is such a crucial verse to this entire text. For in Him, Paul goes on, for in Him we live and move and have our being. As some of your own poets have said, we are His offspring. God is patient. Always has been. And Paul explains this by talking about God and how he begins this with an understanding that God does not need anything we make, nor can He be stored or limited to a temple or a false idol. God does not need us. That is an important theological truth. God does not need us, but we do need Him. Paul tells us that He has given us life. and all that we need to survive in this world. And not even that, but that he has given us a specific time, a specific place to be born so that we can be at the right time to hear his word. Now, the important thing for us, and the important thing for Paul, is found in verse 27. It's that verse I told you to highlight. God did this so that they would seek him and perhaps reach out for him and find him, though he is not far from any one of us. God does not need us, but he does want us. God's patience plays out in this dance that we have with God, coming to know who he is as Lord. It plays out in how we come to know him. God does not force us into a relationship with them. And the fantastic thing is that he is always so close to us that he could very well just reach out, grasp us, and bring us into a relationship without our will being taken into consideration or our desire. But that's not how God acts. God does not create mindless robots. He creates us with free will. He creates us with an opportunity to either know him or reject him. God does not force us, even though he very well could. He wants us to choose him. And he will wait patiently for us to make that decision. He will wait patiently for us to seek Jesus, to reach out to Jesus and to find Jesus. It's just like Jesus says in Matthew chapter 7, verses 7 through 8, ask and it will be given to you. Seek and you will find. Knock and the door will be opened to you. For everyone who asks receives. The one who seeks finds. And to the one who knocks, the door will be open. We need to learn from God, because God is everywhere. We call this theology omnipresence, by the way. It means all. The word omni is all present, okay? Present. All right, so he's all present, all places, all the time. The Bible tells us that there is nowhere that we can go that God is not. So God is everywhere. And anyone who is willing to search for him will find God through Jesus Christ. This gotta reach out and touch him. In the same way, we too have to learn to patiently walk alongside of people who do not know God. To wait for them to reach out to us and to ask for help. And if they do, we walk that journey with them as long as it takes. Pointing Jesus out everywhere we find him. Helping them to see the truth. That is what Jesus wants us to do. That is what Paul did. Waiting for the right moment, for that invite to come in and to speak truth in the lives of people. To take it slow, as the song says, is to be God. Is to be like the Father that we love, the Jesus that we follow, and the Spirit that we listen to. To take it slow is to be patient with the person that we want to reach out to, and to be patient with them as we walk alongside of them. Think about that as we head into our second set of discussion questions. Go ahead and push pause, and when you're ready, come on back, and we'll start our third. Hey guys, welcome back. I am so glad that you are here with us as we continue to talk about patience, because patience comes from God, and it would benefit us greatly to learn from Paul, to learn from God, and rely on that patience that only God has perfected when sharing the gospel. But let's be clear. Even though God is patient, it doesn't mean that he doesn't want us to know the truth, nor does it mean that he doesn't speak to us the truth. Patience does not mean that we never push or that we don't try to convince someone of the truth of Christ. patience has its limits. Acts chapter 17, verse 29. Let's finish our text together. Here's what Luke writes. He says, "Therefore, since we are God's offspring, we should not think that the divine being is like gold or silver or stone, an image made by human design and skill. In the past, God overlooked such ignorance." There's that word again. "But now he commands all people everywhere to repent. For he has set a day when he will judge the world with justice by the man he has appointed. He has given proof of this to everyone by raising him from the dead." Patience is not sitting back and letting people take all the time in the world to figure out God on their own. It's not us saying, well, they're good, they'll figure it out. I'm just going to sit back and wait and not try to do anything. Paul didn't just wait for the Stoic philosophers to come to him. Paul spoke to the Christians and the God-fearing Greeks and to the Jews. And then Paul publicly debated. He made himself known as a person who wanted to talk about Jesus. In the same way, we too must try to convince them that we want to talk to them about Jesus. And we have to convince them of the truth of Jesus when they do invite us into that private conversation. As a matter of fact, we are commanded to do this. Matthew 28, 18 and 20, the very last command that Jesus gives us before his ascension. "Go and make disciples of all the nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father and the Son and the Holy Spirit, and teach them all that I have commanded you, and I will be with you until the very end of the age." Go and teach. Don't just sit back and wait. And don't let them figure it out on their own. See, this is why Paul finishes his conversation with the Stoic philosophers by appealing to their logic. He wanted them to understand that their ignorance does have an end. They can't be content with just not knowing this unknown God. Their ignorance can only go so far. God's patience has a limit. And that limit is the day that Jesus comes back. And since we don't know that day or the minute or the hour, we have to make sure that the people with whom we are talking know the choice that they have to make. See, we can patiently lead people to the truth. And while we must respect the pace of the person we are sharing the gospel with, while we must respect that they are taking it slow or moving fast or, not ready to talk, we got to respect that. We cannot leave them ignorant of the truth. We need to patiently and lovingly lead people to Christ, which means a couple of things. Number one, it means we have to establish a reputation with non-believers. And that reputation comes through public ministry opportunities, speaking to the churches, speaking to the public, but also through personal connections and conversations. You may not have a conversation about Jesus right away, but you can establish a reputation with a person by offering to pray with them, by getting to know them, by doing an act of service for them. Establish that reputation. Work hard at having a good reputation with those in your community. And once you have that reputation and you are invited to do so, share Jesus. Now, you can do that publicly. And in your public ministry opportunities, these times that you get to talk to the churches or talk to the community, allow for questions, allow for comments and connections to be made throughout. This is why we do what we do at the Bridge, because we want these questions to be brought up. We want these comments to be brought out, and we want these connections to be brought together. This is what we do. This is why we do what we do. But we also do it through private connections and conversations. And yes, we have to wait for the invite. But when we get that invite, we don't hesitate. We speak the truth and we get their attention. Paul does this, we already talked about one way, by appealing to their philosophies right? But he also does it in verse 28 by appealing to their philosophers. He quotes, and I think this is the only time in the entire New Testament where we see somebody quote something that is not biblical, that's not from a biblical source, right? Paul quotes two Stoic philosophers that this group of people would certainly know and understand. He gets their attention. We can do the same thing. As a matter of fact, I think we should feel free to use examples from culture that would connect to the person that you are speaking with. That's one of the reasons why we're doing this 21 Pilots song. I know that 21 Pilots may not be your jam, but it is to somebody. And by using that song and having this conversation and connecting culture with Christianity, we are helping people see the truth of Christ in a unique and different way. So establish your reputation, share Jesus, and then follow up. Again, through your public ministry opportunities, make sure that those people who attend, that you have their information and that you make a phone call. Let them know how happy you were to see them that night and how grateful you are that they came to whatever it is that you were doing. And then invite them to another public ministry opportunity, whether you're leading it or not. Invite them to sit with you or your family. Invite them to coffee afterwards or a meal. Just invite them to another public ministry opportunity and then invite them to get to know you. Let them know that you're not just there doing a job, that you're wanting to build a relationship. And I guarantee you do that enough, they'll invite you. They'll invite you to have those private connections or those private conversations. And when you get into those private conversations and you make those private connections, communicate clearly the choice that they need to make about Jesus. Don't force them into the choice. Just let them know what the choices are. Ask for another meeting or a follow-up call. Let them, as they move in their own pace, let them know that you're not going to go away unless they ask you to. So ask for another meeting. Ask for a follow-up call. Put something on the calendar so that they know that you are serious about connecting with them and getting to know them. And then pray like crazy. Prayer is our weapon of choice here. Because Jesus is the one who will get them to come to him, not us. And we can only pray to be used by Jesus. So do these things. Do these things. Establish the reputation. Share with them Jesus Christ. And do some follow-up. Because evangelism, it's not a sprint. It's a marathon. You can't give it 100% at the beginning of a marathon because you'll tire yourself out before the marathon is even over. No, take your time. Have your goal set, but take your time. And while, you can see some results early, you can see some change, you can see some enlightenment, you can see a lot of things, but oftentimes it will take a while to get someone to come to Christ. Like God, we have to learn to be patient. We have to practice that in our everyday lives. And we have to learn, though, to be there and to be present as long as it takes. And if we do that, then maybe, just maybe, we can see a bunch of people who don't know Jesus start to know him a little bit more. This will lead us to our third and final set of discussion questions for the night. Go ahead and take about 10 to 15 minutes to talk about these things. And when you're done, come on back and we will wrap things up. Hey guys, welcome back. I hope you had a really good conversation. I hope this conversation has been good for you ultimately. It's been really good for me to remind me of these things that I need to know as a pastor, as an evangelist, as a person who cares about the lost. You know, the very first lines of our song that we're looking at, 21 Pilots tells us to take it slow. And that's been our focus today. Learning that we need to be patient with people who do not know Jesus. To wait for the invite. To let them reach out. And when we can't, we need to learn from and rely on God to help us strengthen our patience. It's just like this thing that we were talking about a couple weeks ago with forgiveness, right? When we get to a point where we are unable to forgive, we ask God to take over so that His forgiveness becomes our own forgiveness. And when we do that, we find at the end of it, we are strengthened and our forgiveness becomes a little bit better. It's the same thing with patience. I am as patient as I can be, and when I cannot be, I ask God to be patient for me. And at the end of the day, my patience is strengthened and better by God, right? We have to learn from, we have to rely on God to help us when we are being impatient. But we also understand that patience has its limits. And while we cannot force people into a conversation or a relationship with Jesus, nor can we force them to make a decision, we should make clear to them who He is and what He has done for all of us and what they have to do if they want to be in a relationship with Him. So this all leads to the one thing that I want you to know this week. Each and every week I ask you to know one thing, to remember one thing from the sermon so that you can focus on it, pray about it, talk about it, okay? Here it is. Take it slow for them to know. If we want people to know Jesus, and we want to treat them more than just numbers, more than just trophies of salvation, then we got to take it at their pace, on their time. Because that will give them the best chance to be in a relationship with Jesus. And in the long run, we make more friends, have better relationships, and gain more family this way. The best thing we can do is to take it slow for them to know. Now, maybe you're sitting here today and you are on this journey of Christ and you're ready to know Him and you want to talk about that with somebody. I'm going to encourage you and to invite you to reach out to us. Our email is up on the screen. Our website is up on the screen. Our Facebook page, our Instagram, those are up on the screen. Reach out to us. Direct message us. Get on Messenger, email us, whatever it takes. But let us know of your decision and the help that you need, and we will respond to you. If you have questions that you just need someone to answer, reach out to us, and I would love to have a conversation with you. I would love to have coffee with you. I would love to have a meal with you, and just to talk to you about whatever it is that's on your heart and on your mind. But let me also invite you to come to a Tuesday night. Each and every Tuesday night, we meet at 6:30 at Tri-West Middle School in Lizton, Indiana, and we have this time of conversation where at each individual table, you get to talk to about 2 or 3 other people who are there to listen, to challenge, to also ask their own questions. You know, people who may be Christian, may not be Christian. People who may go to church, people who don't go to church. Whatever it is, they are there to be as open and honest as you are. And they will love to have this conversation with you. But if you can't join us in person, but you still want to come, we have an online version. Each and every Tuesday night, we log on at about 6:50 via Zoom. You do have to have a Zoom account to join us. And we have conversations online after, as everybody else does. So we'll listen to the sermon, right? I'm up there preaching. Okay, so you'll hear the sermon, and then one of our elders will get on and lead the conversation online with you, so to hear your questions and to hear your thoughts. It's all about that honest conversation in any way that you're comfortable. Or just come online or in person and don't say a word. Just be there. And that's okay too. You can sit here, you can listen, you can learn. Because all we care about are people knowing Jesus Christ as their Lord and working in their own way to get there. Guys, I want to thank you again for joining us. Next week, we continue this series. So again, I encourage you to go to YouTube or go to Spotify or go to wherever and listen to this song and really try to understand the meaning and find some verses that go along with it. And then we will talk about all of that next week as we talk about empathizing with those with whom do not know Jesus Christ. All right. Until then, as always, peace, love, and soul.